Why post-meal short walking is as effective as 45 minutes walking. Controlling sugar spikes, insulin resistance, and diabetes. Good evening, everyone. Today I want to begin by talking about something that is quietly affecting the health of millions of people around the world. It is not just diabetes. It is something that begins long before diabetes develops. It is the problem of repeated blood sugar spikes and insulin resistance that occur every day after we eat. Scientific concept: insulin resistance. Many people believe that metabolic disease begins only when someone is diagnosed with diabetes. But modern research shows that metabolic dysfunction often begins 10 to 20 years before diabetes appears. During these years, the body is already experiencing repeated glucose spikes after meals, increasing insulin levels, slowly worsening insulin resistance. Scientific concept: postprandial hyperglycemia. These glucose spikes may occur 3 times every day, after breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Each spike may raise blood glucose by 40, 60, or sometimes even 100 milligrams per deciliter above baseline. Even when fasting glucose appears normal, these post-meal spikes can be silently damaging the body. Over time, repeated glucose spikes contribute to chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, endothelial damage in blood vessels, fat accumulation in the liver, worsening insulin resistance. Scientific concept: endothelial dysfunction. This metabolic disturbance is now believed to contribute to many of the most common chronic diseases of modern life. These include type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, fatty liver disease, obesity, cognitive decline, certain cancers. In other words, what we often call chronic diseases may actually be different expressions of a deeper metabolic problem. And that problem is poor control of glucose and insulin metabolism. One of the most striking discoveries of modern metabolic research is that post-meal glucose spikes may be even more damaging than fasting glucose levels. This is because after each meal, the body experiences a rapid surge of glucose and insulin. If this happens repeatedly, day after day, year after year, the metabolic system becomes progressively stressed. Over time, the pancreas must produce larger and larger amounts of insulin. Scientific concept: hyperinsulinemia. This condition is extremely common today. Many individuals may have normal glucose tests, but already have high insulin levels and significant insulin resistance. Eventually, the pancreas cannot keep up. Blood sugar begins to rise permanently. At this stage, the individual is diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Scientific concept: type 2 diabetes. But by the time diabetes is diagnosed, the metabolic problem has often been present for many years. This is why prevention is so important. Fortunately, research has shown that very simple lifestyle strategies can dramatically reduce post-meal glucose spikes. One of the most effective strategies is surprisingly simple. It is walking shortly after meals. Over the past decade, several scientific studies have investigated how short bouts of activity after meals influence glucose metabolism. For example, studies published in Diabetes Care and Diabetologia have shown that short walks after meals can significantly reduce post-meal glucose levels. In some studies, 3 short walks taken after meals were found to be more effective than a single longer exercise session performed earlier in the day. This discovery reveals something very important. What matters is not only how long we exercise, but also when we exercise in relation to metabolism. The human body is a dynamic metabolic system. If we move at the right time, we can work with the body's physiology rather than against it. Today, we will explore why post-meal glucose spikes occur, how insulin resistance develops, why timing of movement is crucial, why short post-meal walking can be so powerful, and which types of activity work best for controlling glucose. By understanding these mechanisms, we can use simple daily habits to protect our metabolism and reduce the risk of many chronic diseases. The hidden problem: post-meal glucose spikes. Most people think diabetes is a problem of fasting blood sugar, but in reality, the greatest damage occurs after meals. Scientific concept: postprandial hyperglycemia. When we eat carbohydrates, 1. Glucose enters the bloodstream. 2. Blood sugar rises rapidly. 3. The pancreas releases insulin. In healthy individuals, glucose returns to normal quickly. But in insulin resistance, glucose rises higher. Glucose remains elevated longer. Insulin levels become excessive. Over time, this leads to vascular damage, inflammation, oxidative stress, pancreatic exhaustion. The tragedy is that many patients may have normal fasting glucose, yet experience large post-meal spikes every day. These spikes silently damage the body for years. What happens when we sit after eating? In modern life, the typical pattern is breakfast, sitting; lunch, sitting; dinner, sitting. This creates a metabolic situation where glucose rises, muscles are inactive, glucose has nowhere to go. Scientific concept: glucotoxicity. Excess glucose begins to damage blood vessels, increase fat storage, worsen insulin resistance. The body evolved for a very different pattern. Historically, people ate food and then continued moving. They walked, gathered food, worked physically. Thus, glucose entering the bloodstream was immediately used by muscles. Why muscles are the key to glucose control? The largest glucose-using organ in the body is skeletal muscle. Scientific concept: skeletal muscle glucose uptake. During exercise, muscle contraction activates GLUT4 transporters. Scientific concept: GLUT4 transporter. These transporters move to the cell membrane and allow glucose to enter muscle cells. The remarkable discovery is that this process can occur without insulin. Muscle contraction alone is enough. Thus, exercise creates a second pathway for glucose disposal. Instead of relying entirely on insulin, the body can clear glucose through muscle activity. Why timing matters more than duration. Most exercise guidelines emphasize duration. For example, walk for 45 minutes daily. This is helpful, but it misses a crucial metabolic window. Glucose peaks 30 to 60 minutes after meals. Scientific concept: postprandial glycemia. If exercise occurs during this window, muscles absorb glucose as it appears in the bloodstream. The spike is prevented before it becomes large. However, if someone exercises in the morning but sits all day after meals, glucose spikes still occur. This is why 3 short walks after meals can sometimes produce greater metabolic benefit than a single long walk, because the activity is precisely timed with glucose metabolism. Scientific evidence. Several clinical studies have examined this concept. Research published in Diabetes Care compared 2 exercise patterns. Group 1 30-minute walk per day. Group 2, 3 10-minute walks after meals. The results were striking. The post-meal walking group had significantly lower glucose levels. The explanation is simple. Exercise performed during glucose absorption intercepts the spike. How short post-meal walking works. Several physiological mechanisms are involved. 1. Muscle glucose uptake. Muscles immediately pull glucose from the bloodstream. 2. Reduced insulin requirement. Scientific concept: hyperinsulinemia. When glucose spikes are reduced, the pancreas releases less insulin. This improves insulin sensitivity over time. 3. Glycogen storage. Scientific concept: muscle glycogen. Glucose entering muscle cells is stored as glycogen. 4. Reduced liver glucose output. Scientific concept: hepatic glucose production. Exercise suppresses excessive glucose release from the liver. Together, these effects flatten the glucose curve. Alternatives to outdoor walking. Not everyone can walk outside after meals. Fortunately, several alternatives work very well. Treadmill walking. This is almost identical to outdoor walking. Muscle activation and glucose uptake are the same. Stair climbing. Very effective because it recruits large leg muscles. Even 3 to 5 minutes can reduce glucose spikes significantly. Mini rebounder. Gentle bouncing activates leg muscles and increases energy expenditure. Body weight squats. Even 10 to 15 squats every few minutes can stimulate glucose uptake. All these activities share one essential feature: active skeletal muscle contraction. Alternatives that do not work well. Some devices appear to simulate exercise, but are metabolically ineffective. Whole body vibration plates. Scientific concept: whole body vibration training. These produce reflex muscle contractions. However, energy expenditure is low and glucose uptake is limited. Passive walking machines. Machines that move the legs without effort. Muscles are not actively contracting. Therefore, glucose uptake is minimal. Sitting leg movement devices. These may improve circulation, but have little impact on glucose metabolism. The rule is simple. Passive movement is not the same as exercise. The body must actively generate force. A practical daily protocol. A very effective metabolic routine is: after breakfast,
10 minutes walking.
after lunch, 10 minutes walking, after dinner, 10 to 15 minutes walking. Total time, 30 to 35 minutes daily. Yet metabolically, this can produce powerful improvements in glucose control, insulin sensitivity, weight regulation, cardiovascular health. A deeper insight into human evolution. Human physiology evolved in an environment where people rarely sat after eating. Movement after meals was natural. Modern life has broken this ancient rhythm. Restoring even a small amount of post-meal movement reconnects us with the metabolic design of the human body. Metabolism, health, and the quality of life. As we come to the end of this discussion, it is worth reflecting on a profound realization. Many of the most serious chronic diseases affecting humanity today may not begin suddenly. They begin quietly. They begin with small metabolic disturbances that occur day after day, often unnoticed. One of the most important of these disturbances is the repeated spike of blood glucose after meals. Scientific concept: postprandial hyperglycemia. These spikes may seem small in isolation, but when they occur 3 times a day, every day, for many years, they gradually shape the internal environment of the body. They increase inflammation. They increase oxidative stress. They damage the delicate inner lining of blood vessels. Scientific concept: endothelial dysfunction. Over time, this metabolic stress contributes to many of the chronic diseases that now dominate modern healthcare. These include heart disease, metabolic syndrome, fatty liver disease, and type 2 diabetes. Scientific concept: metabolic syndrome. What makes this realization both sobering and hopeful is that these processes often develop long before symptoms appear. But this also means something very important. It means that small daily actions can influence our long-term health in powerful ways. And among these actions, one of the simplest is movement after eating. Walking for even a few minutes after a meal allows our muscles to become active participants in glucose regulation. Scientific concept: skeletal muscle glucose uptake. Instead of glucose remaining in the bloodstream and contributing to metabolic stress, it is gently drawn into the muscles where it can be used as energy or stored safely as glycogen. Scientific concept: muscle glycogen. In this way, the simple act of walking becomes more than just physical activity. It becomes a way of restoring harmony between our behavior and our biology. Human physiology evolved in a world where movement after eating was natural. Food was followed by activity, not prolonged sitting. Modern life has changed this rhythm, but the body has not changed. By reintroducing even small amounts of movement after meals, we reconnect with the natural metabolic design of the human body. And perhaps this is one of the most encouraging lessons from modern metabolic science. Health does not always require extreme interventions. Sometimes it begins with small, consistent habits. A short walk after breakfast, a few minutes of movement after lunch, a gentle stroll after dinner. These simple actions, repeated day after day, may help protect the metabolism, support the pancreas, maintain healthy blood vessels, and reduce the risk of many chronic diseases. In a world increasingly dominated by complex medical technologies, it is remarkable that such a simple habit can have such profound physiological effects. And perhaps that is the deeper message. Health is not determined only by what happens in hospitals or laboratories. It is shaped every day by the choices we make in ordinary moments. Moments such as what we do after we eat. Thank you. Holistic Wellness Foundation, IMFAL.